I want to quickly share my thoughts as I was reading Acts 18 about Paul preaching to the people in Corinth. Paul became really frustrated. He really tried his best to preach to the Jews there in the city in his second missionary journey, but he met with a lot of persecution, a lot of opposition and abuse. And he was so frustrated, he got so angry that he says in Acts 18, verse 6, "Your blood be on your own heads. I am clear of my responsibility. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles." So Paul is really trying to warn his own people about, to preach to his own people about Jesus, the Messiah, and warn him that, their religiousness means nothing in the end. In the grand scheme of things, there's nothing they can do. All these worship, all these sacrifices during the temple means nothing without Jesus. So he was preaching to them, and obviously they were very offended by what he was saying. And it got to the point where they were violent, and Paul was like, "That's it. I'm no longer preaching to you. Your blood will be on your own heads. This is your responsibility. I've done my responsibility. I'm done. I'm going to go to the Gentiles." Now, if we stop there, we can totally understand that Paul can just stop preaching to the Jews. He's just going to fully preach to the Gentiles, no longer preaching to the Jews. But then in verses 9 to 10, the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision. God says, "Do not be afraid. Keep on speaking. Do not be silent, for I am with you, and no one is going to attack you or harm you, because I have many people in this city." So God still wanted to encourage Paul, to give him this command to keep speaking. Do not be afraid. Don't give up. Keep preaching to the Jews. So don't forget about the Jews. Keep preaching to them. Paul does eventually, of course, preach to the Gentiles, but God here is telling him to not give up on the Jews. Keep preaching to the Jews. So what was Paul's response? Paul's response was, instead of leaving Corinth, he actually stayed there for a year and a half, still continuing to teach the Word of God. So I felt that was really encouraging to read, because sometimes you feel like you just want to give up preaching the Word of God to the same people who don't believe, who you feel like will never believe. But God says, don't be afraid. I will be with you. Even through the opposition, even through the abuse, God will still be with us. And do not be silent. Keep on speaking. So what comes to your mind as you hear about that, about God encouraging us to keep going, to not be silent, to do not be afraid, that He will still be with us as we're preaching the Word of God to people who seem to not listen, to not want to listen, and who don't want to understand? What are your thoughts? Comment below and let me know what you think.